Stay tuned.
This is CNN.
Newsstand special presentation of People Profiles won't be seen tonight, so we may bring you this special report. This is a special report from CNN.
They don't hesitate to cross borders and take action when they deem that they have it in their interest to do so.
Day 21 and reports that Serbian troops have crossed the border into Albania, clashing with the Kosovo Liberation Army. NATO reaffirms its determination to oust Serb forces from Kosovo, requesting 300 additional aircraft from the U.S.
We and our allies are united on this point. We must stay the course and persist until we prevail.
And the refugee crisis grows. Of particular concern, the children. A CNN special report, Strike Against Yugoslavia. From Washington, Bernard Shaw.
NATO warplanes reportedly are taking aim at Yugoslavia for another day. During this CNN special, we will explore allegations Serb forces crossed the border, briefly seizing an Albanian village, followed by Yugoslav denials the incident ever happened. And Serbian reports of a NATO strike near the town of Nova Varosh. Windows in a mechanical building were damaged when strikes reportedly hit a hydroelectric plant there. Around the city of Novi Sad, a frequent target of NATO strikes, Serbian television reports detonations were heard. More American air power may be heading to the fight, and United States Apache helicopters will soon be on station for an engagement with Yugoslav tanks. Will U.S. ground troops follow? Crossing the borders, the ethnic Albanian exodus continues. For those too young or too frightened to speak of the nightmares they have lived, a chance to release their emotions through art. And Pentagon sources say surveillance equipment reveals evidence of a second suspected mass grave in Kosovo. Proof of alleged Serbian atrocities? These stories and more will be our focus. Pre-dawn strikes are reported over Yugoslavia. Serbian television is reporting explosions north of Belgrade in the city of Novi Sad. More than 125 miles south of Belgrade, airstrikes have reportedly damaged a hydroelectric plant near Nova Varosh. The Pentagon is expected to send 300 more warplanes to help the NATO operation. Meanwhile, CNN's Jamie McIntyre says the alliance has its hands full on another front, trying to feed homeless ethnic Albanians trapped in Kosovo.
In 1993, the United States dropped food packets from cargo planes over Bosnia. But because of Yugoslavia's more potent air defenses, Pentagon planners say a similar operation to feed displaced Albanians in Kosovo would be too risky.
From personal experience and from having planned this type of mission before, airdrops are very, very dangerous.
The United States estimates between 260,000 and 750,000 refugees are trapped in Kosovo. To feed even the lower number would take 60 to 100 flights a day. The slow-flying cargo planes that would be needed would be sitting ducks for Serb anti-aircraft missiles. Another option under consideration is using NATO ground troops to open a corridor into Kosovo so relief supplies could be trucked in. But again, the Pentagon thinks the option is a bad one.
That is a very popular option in the press. It is fraught with at least as many problems as airdrops are.
For one thing, a corridor carved out by ground troops would be vulnerable to attack on three sides and could be easily cut off. It's a plan that would fly in the face of standard Army doctrine. NATO's top commander says it's up to Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic to feed his people, suggesting the potential famine may not be something the military can prevent.
The magnitude of the requirement is, frankly, staggering. And it doesn't appear to be an easy solution at this time.
But some say NATO has an obligation to take risks to save what could be hundreds of thousands of lives.
These people are at risk of dying. So NATO, it's incumbent on NATO, NATO must take whatever action is necessary to get food and water to the Albanians on the ground in Kosovo.
As the plight of the displaced Albanians grows, so will pressure for military intervention.
It is a very large problem. We are aware of it. We know what the obstacles are, and we're doing our best to overcome them.
NATO is looking at several plans to get aid to the Kosovar Albanians still in Kosovo. But Pentagon sources say it's entirely possible that military planners, in the end, will recommend none of the options. Bernie?
Jamie, any further insight on that train attack in Yugoslavia?
Well, today NATO released some of the video from the AGM-130. That's the weapon that the F-15 pilot or backseater was using. Here we see the video. We can see the train there in the lower corner there where the arrow is pointing. Watch this again as the train was just crossing the bridge as this video-guided bomb was hitting its target. This is a video-guided weapon that the pilot of the plane is flying the plane. The backseater is actually steering this weapon to its target. We saw it there in very slow motion. As the pilot went around, he apparently didn't realize that he had hit this train, and he knew that he was supposed to take out the bridge, so he went back to try to hit the bridge again. At this point, the passenger train had moved up on the bridge, and here we can see that the locomotive of the train is on the other side of the bridge now. That's the other span of the bridge. The missile comes in, this is the second missile, and it ends up hitting the locomotive right at the front of the train. So this train was hit twice by U.S. missiles. Now, NATO and Pentagon officials say that while it's easy in retrospect to take a look at these pictures and say there was a train on that bridge, in real time, it was really only a matter of just fractions of a second. Here's the same sequence again, the way the pilot saw it. It was just looking at a 5-inch screen, and the pilot was miles away, not able to see out his window exactly what was going on. Bernie?
Jamie McIntyre at the Pentagon. At a border crossing outside Yugoslavia, reports of shots being fired by Serb forces. Albanian officials say border police near the northern village of Kamenica exchanged gunfire with Serbian aggressors. Yugoslav officials are denying this incident, but CNN's Satinder Bendra explains from Tirana, Albania. If true, it could be the first sign the conflict in Kosovo is expanding.
Shells and mortar rounds are becoming part of life in these remote Albanian villages dotting the Kosovo border. Now, international monitors say tensions have increased as Serb troops advance into Albania. The Albanian Prime Minister says Albanian troops fought back vigorously.
There's been a very strong and urgent, immediate reaction on part of our forces on our side of the border, which has caused or made these troops, these Serb troops, withdraw quickly.
The Albanian government says there were no casualties, but since fighting began here 3 days ago, 8 people have been killed. Another 8 have been injured, including a French national. He was airlifted to Tirana Airport yesterday for medical attention. Belgrade says Albania is supporting fighters of the Kosovo Liberation Army in some of these border camps. The Albanians say it's the Serbs who've actually encouraged the Kosovar Albanians to take up arms by attacking their homes.
So it's crystal clear that these people in Kosovo are defending, are protecting their homes, are protecting their families. And believe me, they do not have tanks.
Tanks and ground troops is what many Albanians want in Kosovo, but that still may be a long way off. Today, NATO troops in Tirana continue preparing for a humanitarian mission called Operation Allied Harbor. 8,000 NATO troops will soon be part of that mission.
I'm creating a task group that will deal with shelter for the refugees and another task group that will deal with the distribution of the aid.
The Albanian government now wants investigators from the War Crimes Tribunal to start meeting refugees and gather evidence. But, says Prime Minister Michael, Albania's borders will always remain open for refugees.
Even if the number would go 1 million, again we would find some place for people here to survive.
It's an obligation for which Albania knows it will require the help of NATO. Satinder Bendra, CNN, Tirana, Albania.
Both NATO and President Clinton say air attacks are grinding down Yugoslavia's ability to wage war, and there are plans to further intensify the air campaign. CNN's Brent Sadler looks at how effective the strikes in Kosovo are and at what cost.
NATO is stepping up the military pressure against targets in Kosovo. A view from Pristina, the provincial capital, and a series of powerful detonations on the outskirts of the city. Serbian television said the overnight raid Monday hit civilian areas, including collateral damage from an explosion close to an apartment block and further damage to a bus station as well as a plastics factory, further highlighting claims in Belgrade that civilian life is being hit hard. Regardless of NATO's insistence, the Yugoslav military is being slowly ground to a halt. One focus of NATO's effort to achieve that aim is to starve Yugoslav forces of essential fuel. It explains repeat raids on fuel installations, especially Yugoslavia's oil refineries. In attacks on potential military supply lines, NATO is demonstrating a determination to destroy more and more road and rail links throughout Serbia. By stripping away important transport routes, especially bridges, the NATO alliance is trying to contain the movements of the military here, especially as it relates to Kosovo. In tightening the screw, NATO's range of recent targets include communications facilities. Serbian television showing the destruction of one of its own satellite dishes at Ivanica in central Serbia. Meanwhile, Yugoslav officials continue to denounce Monday's attack on a bridge in southern Serbia in which a passenger train was destroyed. Serbian television broadcast a computer animation of their version of how the train was hit. Deliberately, it's claimed here. No one disputes this was a tragedy, but now Yugoslav officials say that because of it, they are being falsely accused of conducting an incursion into northern Albania.
An attempt, to divert attention from the criminal act that was done against a passenger train which was en route from Belgrade.
Yugoslav officials say casualties among civilians continue to grow. Around 400 dead, it's being claimed here, and more than 1,000 injured. There are no details about losses in the military or police. An apparent stepped-up response to NATO attacks from Yugoslav air defenses may show a determination to withstand heavier bombing and a determination to resist a continuing build-up of NATO air power. Brent Sadler, CNN, Belgrade.
This war in Yugoslavia is perhaps hardest on children. Some were separated from their families in the mass exodus from Kosovo. Some have died. Others wounded by Serb forces. CNN's Eileen O'Connor looks at how children in one Albanian camp are coping.
You can see it in their faces. Children whose childhood is over, 4, 5, 6 years old, and they've already seen too much. Too much brutality, too much suffering, too much sadness. You can see it in their drawings.
Monster. This is a monster.
Each day, 300 children at this refugee camp in Tirana come to this tent set up by UNICEF, recreating their nightmares. This is therapy to help them deal with post-traumatic stress.
My job consists to help, to forget, and to hope for the future.
Mirella Cavazzi is a teacher in Tirana. She says she is trying to get the children to work through the pain of the present and find hope for the future.
The children see their father dead. This is the past, this is the future.
And so now NATO comes in and helps.
Believe for the school, for the peace, for the new building, the sun.
These children especially are caught in the middle. Valon Blacha is 11, a fourth grader who doesn't like to admit he's scared. Valon says his most vivid memory is one of police pounding on the door, telling he and his family to get out. When his father protested, he was beaten and bloodied. Trauma in these children is one of the most difficult and pressing problems the doctors here must deal with, and the most sensitive. The dilemma is creating hope, preserving cultural identity, without instilling thoughts of revenge and more hatred. We are teaching the children patriotism, love of their history and their country, because without that, they have nothing, says Ismail Gayasi. Gayasi is a refugee himself, a language teacher from Kosovo. He is tutoring these children in the pure dialect of Albania. This is simple preparation, Gayasi says, for independence, and then perhaps unification with Albania. Valon is a quick study, memorizing a poem about the Kosovar flag. Red and black, he says, we love it so. Our mother Kosovo, our mother Albania. Experts warn, though, that nurturing national pride like this may make the memories of brutality suffered all the harder to forget, instilling in yet another generation the hatreds that have been stirred to battle here in the first place. Valorn, for his part, says if he were older, he wouldn't be here. He'd be back in Kosovo fighting. Irene O'Connor, CNN, Tirana.
And when we continue this special report on the strike against Yugoslavia, we'll check in at the White House as the president urges congressional leaders to give the NATO bombing campaign more time.
A California congressman introduced 2 resolutions today challenging the president's authority in the strike against Yugoslavia. Under what 1973 law did Republican Representative Tom Campbell introduce this legislation? The answer when Strike Against Yugoslavia continues.
The sexiest movie of the year is now the best picture of the year and the winner of 7 Academy Awards, including Best Actress Gwyneth Paltrow.
The house is stirring. It's a new day. It is a new world.
In a film critics say has it all. Adventure. You're on my ground now. Comedy. That would have some rolling in the arm. And romance. It's everything you want a movie to be. Shakespeare in Love, rated R. Now playing everywhere.
Do your closets look like this? Your clothes are wrinkled and ruined. You need Magic Hangers, the amazing space-saving solution that doubles, even triples closet space in seconds. Just place each side of the Magic Hanger on any closet rod, then hang your garments. Unhook one side, and like magic, you've saved over 1 foot of closet space. All your clothes stay wrinkle-free. Magic Hangers are perfect for coats, suits, trousers, all your clothes. They'll even hold 30 pounds of heavy sweaters. It's like adding a whole new closet to your home. Off-season storage stays wrinkle-free. Now you can order a set of 20 Magic Hangers for just $14.80. That's enough Magic Hangers to hold 100 garments. But wait, order now, and we'll include this bonus tie rack. Keeps 48 ties wrinkle-free. Turn this into this with Magic Hangers. So order now.
To order your Magic Hangers for $14.90 plus shipping, have your credit card ready and call 1-800-380-2929. That's 1-800-380-2929. Call now.
If you could accompany your data on a trip overseas, the experience would be alarming. Local carriers handing it to national carriers, over to cable carriers, until you don't know who has your data. Unless you send it through here. With the one and only company that owns the entire network, local, national, and international. So you know who has your data.
OnNet from MCI WorldCom.
Unisys people just can't stop working on their clients' problems, even when it looks like they're not working at all.
Excuse me, but some of us are trying to work.
When it comes to solving problems through information services and technology, at Unisys, we eat, sleep, and drink this stuff.
A California congressman introduced 2 resolutions today challenging the president's authority in the strike against Yugoslavia. Under what 1973 law did Republican Representative Tom Campbell introduce this legislation? The answer, the War Powers Act. This Vietnam-era legislation states, the president, in every possible instance, shall consult with Congress before introducing United States Armed Forces into hostilities.
In this particular instance, it is very clear that Congress must declare war if we are to conduct the operations we are in Kosovo.
If Campbell's measures fail in a congressional vote, he vowed to take the matter to federal court. Now, back to strike against Yugoslavia.
Sticking to his plan, President Clinton again told U.S. lawmakers Tuesday he does not favor putting troops on the ground in Kosovo. Our senior White House correspondent, Wolf Blitzer, reports.
For the first time since the start of the NATO airstrike, President Clinton is now openly talking about the billions of dollars he'll ask Congress to pay for them.
These expenses are an immediate and urgent emergency. They are necessary so that we and our NATO allies can continue to pursue this mission.
The Pentagon's preliminary estimate, $3 to $4 billion, although some lawmakers predict it could go as high as $8 billion over the next 6 months for U.S. taxpayers. Aides say the president was encouraged by the congressional reaction during a 2-hour meeting at the White House, especially a willingness to delay any full-scale debate and votes on the operation. His fear, that would send the wrong signal to Yugoslavia's president, Slobodan Milosevic. Mr. Clinton urged members to be patient, reminding them that this operation has gone on only half as long as the 40-day Gulf War air campaign. And he again predicted success.
This is Holocaust Remembrance Day. On this day, let us resolve not to let this ethnic cleansing and killing by Mr. Milosevic go unanswered.
The White House says the president still has no intention of introducing ground troops in Kosovo, though several members urged him to pre-position troops for that possibility.
I find it so utterly inexplicable that the president, having identified a serious threat to our national interests and values, refuses to employ the means necessary to defeat it.
Some senators emerged from the meeting saying the president is not ruling out ground troops.
He believes nothing is essentially off the table, that he will not accept anything less than the achievement of our goal.
Still, Mr. Clinton disappointed some senators by insisting there would be no U.S. arming of the rebel Kosovo Liberation Army to fight the Serbs.
I still think we ought to be arming the KLA and giving them a chance to fight for their own turf.
White House officials say their briefings for Congress will intensify in the coming days. They're no longer saying the operation will continue for weeks. It may now be months. Wolf Blitzer, CNN, the White House.
Coming up, NATO is fighting a high-tech war and telling the world all about it in daily briefings. Is NATO giving out too much information, and are the Serbs listening? Some answers when we return.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Deardorff. Where would you go for a home equity loan? Let's ask. Oh, banks have the best rates.
But banks only lend money when you don't need it.
Advanta National Bank is different. They lend money to people when they need it.
Right. With my credit?
They made their first loans 45 years ago to teachers who had trouble borrowing. They helped out when others wouldn't.
This is a bank, right?
With customers who get the flexibility only a national bank can offer, right over the phone.
Got to move all your accounts there.
Nope, just call Advanta. One of their loan specialists will show you how to use the equity in your home to pay off all of your bills. Get one low monthly payment and save hundreds of dollars a month, plus a tax deduction.
You wait for some board to approve.
You'll get fast approval over the phone. And your money in about 10 days. You don't need to have money in the bank to get money from a bank. To get the loan you want, call Advanta at 1-800-368-7642. You'll see they're different. Hey, they don't keep bankers' hours either.
Coffee? Sounds great. Let me just check my messages.
Hi, Mrs. Kane. It's Hills Pharmacy. Your prescription is ready, and your total comes to $65.
Ooh, tell me that's more than one prescription.
Nope, that's how much just one of my refills costs. Our insurance doesn't cover prescriptions. What can I do?
Join the People's Prescription Plan.
A People's Prescription Plan membership card tells your pharmacist a lot. It says that for one low monthly fee, you and everyone in your household are guaranteed the best price the plan offers on all types of prescription drugs. New prescriptions, refills, injectables, and more. Plus, you can save up to half off the cost of eyeglasses and contact lenses. So get the lowest price available with the People's Prescription Plan. Call now.
Sue, just got back from the drugstore. I really did save with the People's Prescription Plan.
Call 1-800-449-1200. Call now.
Wednesday night on Larry King Live, an exclusive interview with the man behind the Clinton investigation. Independent counsel Judge Ken Starr is the guest for the full hour, live Wednesday night, 9 Eastern, on CNN.
CNN has learned the United States has evidence of a second possible mass grave site in Kosovo. It comes from surveillance photos, part of a massive intelligence effort to support NATO's air campaign. Now, this sharing of intelligence opens the door to security issues, as CNN's David Enzo explains.
It is the first war where military and administration briefers are using surveillance photos daily to illustrate their points.
We continue to use a comprehensive intelligence gathering effort to identify and track all Serbian units
They show MiGs on an airfield in Pristina, or suspected mass grave sites like this one in Pusto-Selo. And U.S. officials now tell CNN they have photo evidence of another suspected mass grave site in nearby Velika Krusa in the southwest of Kosovo that may contain about 100 bodies from a massacre in late March.
One of the things that's really amazing about this war is that every day they're releasing spy satellite photos.
Using spy satellites, surveillance aircraft, and pilotless drones, the U.S. and its allies are collecting a vast array of information about targets in Yugoslavia, especially Kosovo. The information filters rapidly through an internet-like grid, which sends it more quickly than ever to the cockpits of Allied aircraft.
You can have somebody who can see a target, designate a target. You can pass that information through a communications link and place it on a pilot's radar or place it in his heads-up display.
But even with all the high-tech wizardry, there are limits. They can't see through roofs or clouds, one intelligence official says, or into the minds of men.
The good news is that some of these spy planes can locate very precisely where an air defense radar is, and we can target it. The bad news is that the Serbs know this, and they're very sparing in operating their radars or their radios that we might be able to intercept.
And nothing beats information on the ground. U.S. officials are interviewing hundreds of refugees about everything from Serb military strongholds to mass rape. There are also fears Belgrade may be obtaining intelligence about targets NATO is planning to hit. Some targets have been vacated shortly before NATO hit them. Officials say the problem doesn't appear to be espionage, but that a 19-member alliance can leak like a sieve.
I'm not aware of any so-called spies in the operation, but I am very much aware, as are all the pilots and all the operators, that the enemy is trying its level best to hear what we're saying and to glean information from it.
This war is being fought with more high-tech surveillance help than ever before, but old-fashioned intelligence gathered on the ground is still the most valuable and the most difficult to come by. David Ensor, CNN, the Pentagon.
And that concludes our special report on the strike against Yugoslavia. Please stay tuned to CNN for the latest developments in this story. Coming up next, a conversation with Chinese Premier Zhu Rongji. But first, this page from correspondent Richard Blystone's notebook on the refugee crisis.
The feet of the NATO soldiers are like an emblem of power. But the feet of Kosovo's refugees are a book that tells their story better than words. A chronicle of moving on and making do. Refugees all over the world know this. When you've been driven from home, there's 1,000 miles in every step. Transportation's ancient archetype. If they take away everything else, you learn how precious your feet really are. On the road, in the registration queue, the front line between the body and the mud. While they last, there is hope they will one day take you home.
I believe I can call. I think I'll use the phone in the hall.
I call my wings just to say bye. With 5 cents Mondays from MCI.
My Space Jam buddies and I stay in close touch with MCI's 5 cents Sundays.
Just 5 cents a minute. Every minute. Every Sunday.
Along with low wages. Low rates all week long. Call 1-800-SUNDAY to become an MCI customer.
I believe I can call.
At Unisys, we don't stop thinking about a client's problem until it's solved. Even now, this guy is developing a system that'll dramatically increase Delta Airlines' cargo efficiency.
Are you going to putt or just admire the green?
Solving problems this way isn't unusual for us.
I've got it.
In fact, it's par for the course. Unisys. We eat, sleep, and drink this stuff.
Weekdays, join Darren Kagan and Bill Hemmer as the news of the day unfolds on CNN Morning News, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific on CNN.
Porcupines are delicious, a rare delicacy, and the lions know it. But their razor-sharp quills can inflict serious damage. Step away from the chair.
Could be. Spirit Napa, poker, blackjack, bingo, slots, and the like.
This is the most important comfort feature in a new car, because if you're not comfortable with the payment, you'll never be comfortable with the car. Well, right now, during the $5 million inventory reduction at Hillsborough, Chrysler, Plymouth, and Jeep, we're offering some incredibly low payments. A great selection of Grand Cherokees from just $225 a month. And we have hundreds of top-quality pre-owned vehicles with payments as low as $79. The $5 million inventory reduction? Hurry, they're selling fast at Hillsborough, Chrysler, Plymouth, and Jeep.
Sports Tonight with Fred and Vince, 11 Eastern on CNN.
Good evening from New York, where one of China's highest-ranking officials has come on the fifth leg of a six-city tour of the United States. Premier Zhu Rongji has spent the past week and more on a swing from the West Coast to the East, meeting with ordinary Americans and with high-ranking government officials. In particular, he met with President Bill Clinton and grappled with a long list of contentious issues, from stealing nuclear secrets to international trade. Premier Zhu, we thank you very much for joining us. You described yourself before this trip as an ordinary Chinese with a bad temper. And my first question is, because there was no deal worked out with regard to the World Trade Organization, do you now have a bad temper?
Well, not only did I not lose my temper in the United States, but I have managed to keep a smiling face all along. And I do not feel that the talks about the WTO were unsuccessful. And President Clinton and I signed a joint statement in which the United States very clearly states that it strongly supports the accession of the People's Republic of China to the WTO during the year 1999. And I feel that our work is in the final stages now, so through our joint efforts, we will be able to achieve an agreement.
By the end of this year, is there any doubt in your mind that there will be an agreement by the end of this year?
Based on what I've heard from some Congress people and also some other information and other reports that I've heard, they say that it may take another 2 or 3 months, but of course I would much rather see it happen in another 2 weeks' time.
You, at one point in the last few days, I believe to members of Congress, described President Clinton as lacking courage, suggesting that he gave in to political concerns in the United States. Is that your view of the president? Is he weaker politically than you expected?
I don't think we should look at this as a matter of courage. Rather, it's a judgment of opportunity, and this reflects his assessment of the domestic political situation in the U.S. And I believe that he should make up his mind and come to some conclusion based on the views of Congress and on popular opinion in the United States. And I do believe he will make the right decision. Based on my trip to the United States, so far I've already been to 5 cities, including New York, and tomorrow we have still to go to Boston. I've had an opportunity to come into contact with a broad array of people in the United States, including members of Congress and people from the business community and people from the financial community and members of the press. And I find that all the Americans we've met have been very friendly to China, and I think that this bodes well for a continuing progressive development in U.S.-China relations. And I feel that all the people we've met certainly would be supportive of China's accession to the WTO. And at 2 o'clock this afternoon, President Clinton called me on the telephone, and I told him about the sense that I had, and he told me that he had the same sense. So I don't think it will take a very long time for us to achieve an agreement.
President Clinton has talked about in this regard the importance of the United States and China remaining engaged. Do you agree that it's important for the two countries to remain engaged?
Well, what you call engagement, we call a friendly cooperative relationship between China and the United States. And I believe that a cooperative, friendly relationship between China and the United States has been the consistent policy of both your political parties, both the Republicans and the Democrats. The policy in the United States has been a bipartisan one ever since President Nixon first opened up the door of U.S.-China relations. After all, he was a Republican, but then it was during the administration of President Carter, who was a Democrat, that the two countries achieved normal diplomatic relations. And then subsequently, Presidents Reagan and Bush, who were Republicans, continued to promote and foster the relationship. And then the Democratic President Clinton and our President Jiang together announced that we were going to try to develop a constructive strategic partnership. And so I think this chain of events shows that this policy has been a bipartisan one. And now I feel that we are entering into a new phase, which is entirely consistent with the interests not only of our two countries, but with that of the world at large. And on the Chinese side, if you look back to Chairman Mao and Premier Zhou Enlai and Mr. Deng Xiaoping and now President Jiang Zemin, three successive generations of our leaders have also been supportive of this policy. So I think that what you call engagement is the right way to go, and the so-called containment, or even what some people now call soft containment, is not the right way.
This has been the view. At the same time, it has been acknowledged there will be differences over specific issues. One of those specific issues now is, of course, human rights. President Clinton and others have spoken out. Just recently, your government has jailed political dissenters, people who wanted to form an opposition political party. Do you think, Mr. Prime Minister, that once China is stronger economically, that it will be able to tolerate greater political dissent?
Oftentimes, in terms of human rights, while we may share the same notions, we will differ on how to go about implementing them, because countries, after all, have different circumstances. And I think China is constantly improving its human rights situation, but at the same time, we still have a long way to go, and we must continue to improve in this area. And it's because of that that we are willing to listen to opinions from our foreign friends. But at the same time, you have to bear in mind that we do have the burden of 2,000 years of traditional thinking, and this has affected the psychology of our people. And also bear in mind that the educational level of our population is not comparable to that in the United States. Now, recently, the National People's Congress of China has been revising our Constitution, and they are adding an amendment to our Constitution which calls for the country to be ruled according to law. And so this shows that China wants to establish a complete legal and judicial system and to establish a country where there is rule of law. But on the other hand, this is something that is not easily achieved. We lack a large force of people with the right qualifications. Right now, we have a great shortage of judges and of lawyers, and it's rather a shame that you have so many lawyers in the United States when we have so few of them in China. So, but you see, we are training these people, but it takes time, and you just can't train them overnight. So when you're talking about concern over improving human rights, we are actually more anxious than you are in terms of wanting to see the situation improve. So, of course, economic reforms will also bring about political reforms, but you can see that we are already engaging in some political reforms, just as this constitutional amendment that I mentioned just now is steering us in the direction of ruling the country according to law. And our Constitution does stipulate that people have the freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, and so that does mean that there is consideration given to those rights. But of course, this is under the overall context of not doing anything that would damage the public good or the public interest. But we do want to continue to move in this direction. So we do acknowledge that we have deficiencies in the area of human rights, but at the same time we would also say that the people of China right now are enjoying a level of human rights that is unprecedented in our history.
And the United States, many people in the United States recognize that. Certainly the United States government recognizes. My question to you is your own experience. Twice you were sent into exile by previous regimes in China. Did your own experience going through what you went through, you worked I believe, on a pig farm for a number of years, you worked at hard manual labor. Did that teach you that really China has nothing to fear from some political dissent?
我想我个人的经历
Well, I don't think my own personal experience is worth discussing in any detail, and I don't want to go into this digression here. But I think if you look, you will find that our leaders all share a similar personal experience, namely that when they were young, we were all fighting for democracy, we were fighting for freedom and fighting for the independence and liberation of our country.
不能够想象
And it would be unimaginable that those of us who had spent a lifetime fighting to improve the rights of the Chinese people would want to go violate the rights of the Chinese people.
现在问题就是我们的工作做得怎么样，我们将努力的工作。
So the question is, are we doing our work well? And we just have to work hard to do it better.
Thank you.
One of the reasons you said you were not looking forward to this trip was the report that China had stolen secrets over the design of the most modern U.S. nuclear warhead and the neutron bomb. But since the Minister of State Security reports directly to you, if this had taken place, wouldn't you, of all people, have known about it, have heard about it?
我曾经讲过
As I had said previously, I really didn't want to come now. Now, it's not that I didn't want to come at all. I just felt that perhaps this trip would have been better if it had taken place later. But the reason I felt that way was because I feel that the current atmosphere was not very good, that on many issues there's an anti-China sentiment that is very pervasive, and it's not related specifically to this espionage case. So I think that that this is a problem in the United States right now.
我曾经在华盛顿
And I've already said in Washington, D.C. that I had not heard of such an espionage case.
我不相信中国的
I do not believe that China would be able to acquire such American military secrets through espionage.
我在来以前也问过江泽民
Before coming here, I had asked President Jiang Zemin about this issue, and he personally told me that he knew nothing about it.
我和江泽民主席也问过军方的领导人，他们说也不知道。
And President Jiang and I also went to ask our military leaders, and they said that they knew nothing about this.
我也问过我们的安全部长，他说他也不知道。
And I also asked our Minister of State Security, and he said he knew nothing about it.
如果你们要调查的话，我们可以配合你调查。
So if you want to investigate, we will be willing to assist you.
If it happened, would the United States be right in insisting on some sort of verification for future secure transfers of a high security nature?
我认为现在美国对
I think right now the U.S. is far too restrictive in its exports towards China. There are many things that don't even qualify to be called high tech, and even so, they're not allowed to be exported to China.
包括我们气象预报需要进口计算机，美国也没有批准。
You know, we need computers to do weather forecasting with, but even that kind of computers the United States will not export to us.
我认为这就是中美贸易逆差的一个重要原因。
And I feel that this is a very important reason why there is a trade deficit between China and the U.S.
Is spying ever appropriate between friendly countries?
你几乎向我提出一个哲学问题。
That, to me, sounds like you're posing a philosophical question, so I can only answer by saying I know of no espionage case.
I wondered what your view was, if you thought it was ever appropriate.
本来我就想知道您认为有没有任何情况是可以有这种活动。
我不知道有任何对美国的间谍活动。
I know of no espionage activities directed against the United States.
A number of sensitive areas that I want to ask you about, one right after the other. The next one is theater missile defense. This is something the United States has discussed with Japan. There's been some speculation that if such a thing is created, Taiwan might be invited to be part of it. If that happened, what would your country do?
我认为
Our view of the theater of missile defense system is that it violates international agreements on missiles, and it is not conducive to arms control.
但是是不是进行这种TMD？
Whether or not you build a TMD, that's your business. But if you were to get Taiwan involved in this TMD, then China's position is that it would be adamantly opposed to such an action because this action would be an intervention in China's internal affairs as well as a transgression and encroachment on China's sovereignty.
And can you say what China would do?
那么中国将采取什么行动呢？
我们还能采取什么行动呢？我们反对。
Well, what could we do? We would be objecting.
我们希望美国考虑我们这个意见。
We would hope that the Americans would take our views into consideration.
One of several other issues of disagreement between the United States and China, alleged campaign contributions. Have you know General G, the head of the Military Intelligence Division, have you or others asked him if he gave this gentleman, Johnny Chung, money to give to the Democratic Party in the United States?
我已经说过了。
Well, I've already said that if China were going to get into giving campaign contributions because we felt that those contributions were effective, we would certainly never be so stupid as to limit the contribution to a mere $300,000.
对你讲的季胜德，我根本不认识这个人，没见过面。
As for the General Ji Shengde that you mentioned, I do not know him. I have never met him.
他是不是做过这个事情？为了什么目的做这个事情？我一概不知道。
And I know nothing as to whether or not he has ever done such a thing or what motive he could possibly have if he did do such a thing.
我答应过克林顿总统，我们可以配合他调查。
But I did promise President Clinton that we would work with him in investigating this matter.
我附带讲一句，我也问过江泽民主席，他说他也不知道有这个事情。
I might also add that I also asked President Jiang about this matter, and he again said that he knew nothing about it either.
Kosovo. Your government has been very clear it opposes the NATO airstrike. Is your government supportive of the government of Mr. Milosevic?
我们是从正义的立场。
Our position is based on what is right. It is based on international law and based on international norms. And what we are opposed to is intervention in the internal affairs or the sovereignty of a country. And ethnic conflicts fall within the scope of internal affairs.
我们绝对没有把这个问题。
And we absolutely do not see this in ideological terms, nor are we aligning ourselves with any particular individual person, nor are we taking this stance because of some selfish interest of our own. Right now, you can see that this military intervention has already led to a large number of casualties as well as economic losses. And this includes even 3 Americans who've been taken prisoner. And we are very concerned about this. The Balkans are known to be the powder keg of Europe, and wars that have taken place in the Balkans are likely to be very dangerous. And that is why we hope that this intervention will come to a halt and that political negotiations can get underway again, because this would be the only way to achieve a true solution to this problem. And this is also in the best interest of the people of the whole world, including the people of the United States, as well as the people of Yugoslavia and also the people of Kosovo.
You've said you favor a political solution no matter what ethnic violence is underway. I want to ask, to be clear, do you truly mean that no matter what ethnic violence takes place, no matter how many lives are lost, that it's the internal matter of a country, that no one else should get involved?
我们反对任何的种族屠杀。如果真的有这种种族屠杀的话，
We are against any kind of ethnic killings, regardless of who is engaged in it, and this is provided, of course, that this has been going on.
但是根据我们的经验，很多民族问题是历史遗留的。这个不同民族之间的相互的残杀，往往是非常残酷的。
And based on our own experience, we believe that many ethnic problems were created and are vestiges of history, and that a lot of the mutual killing that takes place in ethnic conflict is exceptionally brutal.
但是这种民族问题的解决，
You see, the way to solve this would be for the government of the country involved to have the different ethnic groups sit down on a basis of equality and friendship and to talk it out among themselves. Any form of external intervention will only increase the number of casualties. It will not solve the problem.
Under any circumstance.
我们不希望看到更多的生命的死亡。
We do not want to see greater loss of life.
A question about your country, China. Where would you like to see China? Where do you think China will be 40, 50, 60 years from now? Will it be a socialist country? Will there be some democracy? How do you see it developing politically and economically?
我想再过40年。
Well, I think in another 40 years, 50 years, or even 60 years, China will have developed, but even then it will still not have surpassed the United States.
也许还是你们的市场。
It would certainly not be a threat to the United States. It could only be a friend to the United States and possibly be a good market of the United States.
至于中国的政治改革将不断的前进，但是我们将继续坚持社会主义。
Political reform in China will continue, but we will continue to maintain socialism.
我们的经济将是社会主义的市场经济，只有这种经济才能够避免经济危机。
And our economic system will continue to be that of a socialist market economy because this is the only system which would allow us to avoid economic crises.
当然，我们也很多东西向你们学习，因为你们这一段繁荣的时期已经是历史上最长的了。
But of course there is much that we have to learn from you because your current period of economic expansion is the longest in history.
Socialism forever?
Yes.
Forever and ever. But a place
但是我讲的社会主义是有中国特色的社会主义。
But the socialism I'm talking about has Chinese characteristics.
Yeah.
You have coming up this year the 10th anniversary of the pro-democracy demonstrations in Beijing. You said to the Wall Street Journal in an interview before you left Beijing, and I'm quoting you, you said, "We hope not to witness the recurrence of such things." What did you mean by that?
关于你讲的就是中国在1989年发生的6次的事件吧。
Well, what you're talking about is the episode that happened on June the 4th, 1989.
这个事情我们中国已经有非常明确的结论了。
In China, we have already come to a very clear conclusion about that incident.
到现在我们也没有改变我们的结论。
And to this day, we have not changed our conclusion.
我想这种事情大概不会再发生了。
But I do believe that this sort of thing will not happen again.
因为我们都有经验了。
Because now we have this experience.
What do you think will not happen again? The pro-democracy demonstrations or the way the government chose to deal with those?
因为我们认为中国已经有足够的民主，我们不会再发生这种事情。
Because we feel that China has an adequate measure of democracy now, and therefore we feel that something like that will not happen again.
Does China have something to fear from democracy?
中国对民主有没有什么要恐惧的呢？
我这一生从我的青年时代开始就在为民主而斗争，我不知道你指的让我恐惧什么东西。
Since my own youth, I have been spending my lifetime fighting for democracy, so I don't see anything about it that I should be afraid of.
我们要的民主，但是同时要法治，你不能违反中国的法律。民主跟法治应该是同时的。
Now, we want democracy. We also want rule of law. So in the course of wanting democracy, you cannot violate the law. But democracy and rule of law should be developed together, side by side and concurrently.
1989年的事件就是由于他们要民主，但是他们不讲法治，所以才发生了这个事情。
The episode in 1989 happened because they wanted democracy, but they didn't want rule of law.
但是他们是不是真正要求民主，或者要求什么样的民主，那我也搞不清楚。
Now, of course, I really wouldn't be in a position to say if what they wanted was really democracy or what form of democracy it was that they wanted.
And finally, Premier Xu, let me ask you, what would be your message to people around the world to perhaps to help them understand about China, something perhaps that they don't understand now? What would you have people know or understand about your country? People in the United States, people in Europe, Africa, the rest of the world, that perhaps they don't know.
我认为目前在
I think that in the current anti-China sentiment in the United States, the people whose voices are loudest are the ones who lack the understanding of China the most, and oftentimes they are the ones who've never been to China who raise their voices the most. And so I think the best way to promote and to facilitate better relations between China and the United States would be to have more exchanges of people, to have people visiting each other more often, to have people communicating with each other better.
Premier Xu, we thank you very much, all of us at CNN. Thank you very much for talking with us in this interview.
Or if I may, I would like to take this opportunity through CNN to make one final remark, namely that on this visit, President Clinton and the government of the United States has extended great hospitality to us, and this has given us an opportunity to have this very constructive and productive visit. And we've also managed to visit 6 of your major cities and meet with a great number of people from many different circles. And through these visits, we've come to have a very strong feeling of the positive sentiments that American people have for Chinese people. And so I would like to take this opportunity to express our very heartfelt thanks to the people of the United States, to the government of the United States, and to President Clinton.
Thank you very much.
I won't set off any rivalry by asking which was your favorite city.
是不是如果问您最喜欢哪一个城市，会不会使到这些城市之间就觉得有点竞争？
Thank you very much.
你们所有的城市我都喜欢。
I like all the cities.
Spoken like a politician.
您真是很有政治家作风的回答。
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
And from New York, I'm Judy Woodruff.
Politics.
And instead of voting their conscience, they got their finger in the wind.
International policy.
You know the way to undermine Castro? Let democracy in.
Abortion.
It is not for people to take the law in their own hands and say so.
Crossfire. The program that takes on the tough issues.
You think we can roll up the sidewalk? No. Welcome to the 21st century.
Join Robert Novak and Bill Press on Crossfire. Weeknights at 7:30 Eastern, only on CNN.
On CNN, the latest on the next step in NATO's air campaign against Serb forces. Strike against Yugoslavia. Tomorrow at 10 Eastern on CNN.
The road doesn't know if it's bumpy or rainy or icy. But Bravada knows. Road stupid. Bravada smart. Start outsmarting the road with Bravada Smart Track. It automatically adjusts to changing road conditions with no buttons or levers. Once again, road stupid. Bravada Smart. Bravada by Oldsmobile. Start something.
Guaranteed a new movie. What you might not know is that you get another crack at it Tuesday night. If you miss Saturday Night Guarantee, you lose Second Chance Tuesday.
Call TCI and order HBO today.
Sports Tonight with Fred and Vince, 11 Eastern on CNN.
If, in the worst of all cases, the NATO air campaign does not bring Milosevic to accept our terms, then the only way to finish the fight will be to go in on the ground.
The introduction of United States forces on the ground in the Balkans could be a very, very significant mistake.
Tonight, battle lines are being drawn in Congress over Kosovo. What do members think? Is it time for ground troops? Is it time for Congress to declare war? Or is it time for the United States to pull out?
From Washington, Crossfire. On the left, Bill Press. On the right, Robert Novak.
In the crossfire, Democratic Congressman Dennis Kucinich of Ohio and Republican Congressman Joe Scarborough of Florida, a member of the Armed Services Committee.
Good evening. Welcome to Crossfire, day 21 of NATO airstrikes. But who's counting? So far, not exactly a roaring success. By this time, Milosevic was supposed to have cried uncle. He hasn't. The killing in Kosovo was supposed to have stopped. It hasn't. The flow of refugees was supposed to be over. It's not. And today, there are reports Serbian troops invaded neighboring Albania, denied by Yugoslavia's foreign ministry.
These new allegations which are coming from NATO quarters are an attempt, to divert attention from the criminal act that was done against passenger trains.
He was referring, of course, to a passenger train struck yesterday by a NATO missile. At the White House, President Clinton met with dozens of members of Congress, asking them to pay the freight for Kosovo, estimated at $3 to $8 billion over the next 6 months. And he announced he's sending 300 more aircraft.
Now we are taking our Allied air campaign to the next level, with more aircraft in the region, with a British carrier joining our USS Roosevelt and a French carrier in the area.
Across town, Senator John McCain called for the immediate mobilization of ground troops for Kosovo. Now, will Congress support ground troops, demand a declaration of war, pay the bill, or pull the plug? That's our Crossfire tonight with 2 members of Congress, 1 Republican, 1 Democrat, both critical of NATO airstrikes. Sitting in again on the right tonight with us, campaign strategist, Republican strategist Ralph Reed. Ralph.
Thanks a lot, Bill. Congressman, welcome to Crossfire. You've been very critical of the NATO and U.S. operation. You've called for a suspension of airstrikes. You've called for the United States to go back to the negotiating table with Russian intermediaries. But, Congressman, today is Holocaust Remembrance Day. It's a day when we remember the 6 million Jews and the millions of others who died in the ghettos and the ovens of Nazi concentration camps. We also learned today that there are NATO aerial photographs of mass graves containing hundreds of people who have been liquidated by Serb forces. Isn't there a danger if we follow your recommendation that we're consigning these people to the same kind of death that the innocent victims of the Holocaust suffered?
I know how people feel, and very strongly, not just about the Holocaust, which is one of the greatest disasters in the history of the world, but also I know how people feel about what's happened to the Kosovo Albanians. I feel the same way. I feel something has to be done to bring about some justice. But I don't think we want to trade graves in Kosovo for graves in the United States, graves from our servicemen and servicewomen who would have to go over there and fight a war that it's going to be very difficult to win. So what I'm advocating is that we continue to talk peace, not just get locked into this irrevocable logic of war, but get the Russians involved. We've really put them aside, help them, bring them into the negotiations for a diplomatic settlement, get religious leaders involved, which is something we haven't done. We need a different type of negotiating framework, maybe outside of NATO, but we need to keep thinking peace and try to find a way to have a diplomatic solution. We certainly don't want a continuing any evidence that resonates with Holocaust-type memories. And I think we best remember the Holocaust by also acknowledging we don't want blood shed anywhere.
Well, you asked Bill Clinton in a letter that you sent to the White House to suspend airstrikes on Orthodox Easter Sunday, which was 2 days ago. He obviously rejected your request. Don't you find it a little ironic that we have in the White House somebody who protested the Vietnam War, somebody who opposed Lyndon Johnson, somebody who evaded the draft, and now he's suddenly turned into a born-again hawk who's bombing civilians in Belgrade?
Well, the reason why I made that appeal is that we need to show that in this country we have not just a respect for the values of Orthodox Christians, but a respect for our own religious values and our religious principles. And I think that there is a sense of people get drawn into this logic of war, and then we forget who we are. As a nation, we're a great nation. We're a nation that believes in God, believes in a higher spiritual principle. Look, in God we trust, our motto. I mean, let's not forget that as we get propelled into a war so that we're not creating victims where we don't want them to happen. That's why I thought we'd use that holy day of the resurrection to remind us that, and I don't want to get too spiritual about this, but it doesn't hurt to talk about the passion of Christ also was followed by a resurrection. Well, and it's a time to come back, and that's what I was appealing to.
And that's certainly something that the president took into consideration when he was talking about Ramadan. talking about the need for the missiles to fly the day before his impeachment, because Ramadan was coming up and let's get it out of the way. But apparently it didn't mean as much to him for the Orthodox Christians, and it saw it as a tremendous affront. You talked about Holocaust today, remembering the Holocaust. I think it's very important for us to also remember that 2 million Christians have been slaughtered in Sudan. 1.2 million people have been slaughtered in Rwanda. 1 million people have been slaughtered in Tibet. We saw the scenes in Tiananmen Square. The question is, can you effectively bring about change without seeing Americans and others killed? And it's very important to remember, over the past 600 years, a lot of Serbs have been slaughtered by the other side, too.
So this is the Joe Scarborough theory that two wrongs do, in fact, make a right. So since we weren't there when we should have been, then we shouldn't be here. We did one thing wrong, so let's do everything wrong. Okay. This is the new theory of public policy.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. What do you mean? You're getting excited here. What do you mean two wrongs don't make a right?
Saying we weren't there in Rwanda, or we weren't there in the Sudan, or we weren't there wherever.
Oh, it's still going on. I talked to Tony Hall.
That's the point. So because we're not there, then we shouldn't be in Kosovo.
No, what I'm saying is, if you have an administration who for the past 6 years has been gutting defense to the point that right now we don't even have enough missiles to drop. You know, we have generals and admirals come up and testify with a straight face to us in the Armed Services Committee that we can fight 2 regional conflicts. We can't even fight a civil war in the Balkans right now without running out of weapons. What I'm saying is, if this president wants the United States to be Globocop, if the president of the United States wants us to stop every civil war across the globe on all continents, then he better step up to the plate and start funding us militarily. But I am here to tell you that this president has forgotten the very lessons of Vietnam that supposedly he and Robin Cook and Al Gore and all these peaceniks 25 years ago were preaching about. They've forgotten it already, and that's something that Cap Weinberger in the 80s understood. It's something that Ronald Reagan and George Bush understood. Now, you better have a narrowly focused, disciplined foreign policy, or Americans will come back to Dover in body bags.
Let me tell you, nice speech. Let me tell you, George Bush, one thing that George Bush understood in December '92, he warned Milosevic, you better stay out of Kosovo, keep your hands off the Kosovars, or you will face U.S. military action. That was George Bush.
The difference is Milosevic understood that George Bush had a disciplined foreign policy. He had a disciplined military group of people running the operation, and he knew that George Bush's words would be prompt.
I want to be sure I understand your position. Just trying to summarize your 5-minute monologue there, which is that because Bill Clinton has not put enough money into the defense budget, now, when we see Milosevic having done ethnic cleansing in Croatia, ethnic cleansing in Bosnia, now ethnic cleansing in Kosovo, when we see him, in fact, now crossing into another country, into Albania, and invading another country, we still should do nothing only because Bill Clinton, according to you, hasn't put enough money into the defense budget.
No, I'm not
Does
saying
that add up? That is a total non-sequitur.
What I'm saying is, that's a very nice 5-minute question. You and Chris Matthews ought to have drinks after this show.
We do.
I know you do. What I'm saying is, foreign policy in the United States of America has to be disciplined. We have to send a disciplined, consistent message to thugs like Milosevic across the globe. This administration has not done that. Now, what we learned from Vietnam is, unless there is a vital American interest that is clearly defined and understood by the American people, unless there is a timeline, and unless there's an exit strategy, we don't send American troops in to get shot at. The president has miserably failed on all 3 counts. That's something we learned from Vietnam, and unfortunately we're going to learn it here again if we don't.
Let me get Congressman Kucinich. Isn't it true that this is really not a purely internal Yugoslavian matter? It's not like Vietnam, where it's a war between factions within a country. We know today that Serb forces incurred into Albania and got into a firefight with Albanian soldiers. Doesn't that demonstrate, Congressman, that Slobodan Milosevic is not just a threat to his own people? He's not just slaughtering his own people. He threatens the entire stability of Central Europe. Isn't that right?
Well, I don't know about that report, but I will tell you this, that we ought to be concerned that any action that takes place in the Balkans can lead to a destabilization of the region, including our bombings, by the way. We have to be very certain that the steps that we take are deliberate enough not to create any harm. There's been much written about the Hippocratic Oath, about do no harm. And we have to watch that we're not doing further harm with our actions. And, you know, there's been talk about a ground invasion. Where would that ground ground invasion take place, and would it take place from Hungarian territory and thereby involve the Hungarian Serbs? Would it take place from Albania and precipitate a war between Albania and Serbia?
What about the fact that Milosevic had murdered on Sunday, on Easter Sunday, the time you called for President Clinton to pull back? He had murdered an independent journalist in Yugoslavia who was one of the critics of his regime.
I think we are familiar with what Mr. Milosevic stands for, and I don't think any right-thinking person would endorse it. But we are also familiar with what the United States stands for and what the high principles are of this nation. And my concern is
so why not use force?
My concern is that with the bombing that we've been doing in the north, in Serbia, that we are actually destabilizing the civilian infrastructure of the country and going to make it very tough to dislodge him later, because you need a political culture, a civil culture, to be able to knock him out. And as much as I want to see him out, I want to make sure that there are people there who will support his ouster. And what we're doing right now, we've made him stronger with the bombing. I don't think there's anyone who would suggest, anyway, that we've made him weaker. I don't know what you think about it.
Much stronger. In fact, so much stronger that it's going to be next to impossible to pry the Serbs from Milosevic, who is a thug.
All right, real quickly, Congressman, we're going to stop right there just so we can take a break. And when we come back, raise the important question, how much is this whole operation going to cost? And where's the money going to come from? When we come back.
The average funeral now costs over $5,000, and many can cost up to $10,000 or more. But the most Social Security will pay your survivors, if they qualify, is only $255, leaving your loved ones to pay the balance. If you're age 40 to 80, you can protect your loved ones with a Mature Life Plan. With the Mature Life Plan, you can make sure that tax-free funds are available at your family's time of need.
It's important to know my wife or kids won't be burdened if anything happens to me.
The rate is still affordable, and if you're age 40 to 80, you automatically qualify.
With the Mature Life Plan, there's no medical exam. There's not even any health questions, and you cannot be turned down for coverage. That's right. No medical exam, no health questions, and you cannot be turned down. Your rates will never increase, your benefits will never decrease, and your plan cannot be canceled. Call now, and we'll send you a free booklet that explains Social Security and government benefits. We'll also send information about the Mature Life Plan.
Everything's done by mail. They make it easy and affordable.
This is the kind of plan that gives you peace of mind.
It's a great plan. As you get older, your rates don't go up, and your benefits stay the same.
I feel good knowing the people I love will be taken care of.
The Mature Life Plan is something we all have to think about. It's something we'll all someday need. To receive your free booklet and free information in the mail with absolutely no obligation, just call the toll-free number on your screen. Find out how you can protect your loved ones. Call now.
To receive your free information in the mail, call 1-800-306-5400. That's 1-800-306-5400. Call now.
There are a lot of TV news magazines covering lots of stories, but when you want the big stories first, turn to CNN and Time. First on TV to reveal how a secret UN operation halted missile parts headed for Iraqi Coptic red-handed. First to report why women are murdered for disgracing their families.
No solution, no way but to kill them.
First to uncover how big city cops lower the crime rate by not reporting crime.
Violation of public trust.
CNN and Time, bringing the big stories first to TV News Magazine on CNN.
On CNN, the latest on the next step in NATO's air campaign against Serb forces, the refugee exodus, and the efforts toward a diplomatic resolution. Strike against Yugoslavia, a special report, tomorrow at 10 Eastern on CNN.
Morning News, weekdays 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific on CNN.
Welcome back to Crossfire. There appear to be as many opinions about what to do in Kosovo as there are members of the House and Senate. Some want to get out, some want to go in with full force. So what will Congress say, and how much say should Congress have anyway? That's tonight's debate with two members, Dennis Kucinich, Democrat from Ohio, and Joe Scarborough, Republican from Florida. Our co-host on the right again tonight, Republican strategist Ralph Reed. Congressman Scarborough, I want to come back to a couple of points you just made, because I think they're the same lines I hear from everyone who's critical of this operation, and I'm not in love with it. I mean, I'm a liberal, I'm a dove, I hate war. I just think sometimes, and then this happens to be one of them, it may be necessary. You said there's no exit strategy. Can you tell me when we've ever gone into a war and knew how we were going to get out?
Sure. And I'm glad you asked that question. 1991 in the Gulf War, you had President Bush. First of all, the first thing he did was he got the entire world community, largest coalition ever, behind our operation against Saddam Hussein. His exit strategy was, you know, the second that Saddam in Iraq is driven out of Kuwait, we will come home. Very disciplined approach. It was under that premise that he built this monstrous coalition. And the second, very interesting, because there are a lot of armed share quarterbacks later on. The second they were driven out of Kuwait, you had all this clamoring, hey, let's chase him into Baghdad and let's kill him. And George Bush said no. He was very disciplined. The troops pulled out, and it was a success.
It sounds very tidy, Congressman.
Well, it's not tidy, but it's discipline.
Well, it's not
something that this administration doesn't understand.
But it's also not true. I recommend you a book by the name of Endgame, written by Scott Ritter, who was head of our inspections, UN inspections in Iraq, who points out that at the end of the war, there were actually several exit strategies, one of which was to go in and surround Baghdad and force Saddam Hussein out of power. And nobody knew which one they were going to end up with. And in fact, we ended up with maybe not the best one.
President Bush. Now, President Bush very clearly, and you can read it in history, you can read it in the New York Times, President Bush very clearly said this is not about killing Saddam Hussein. This is about getting the Iraqis out of Kuwait. And when that happens, we will come home. He was very disciplined about it. That's what Colin Powell suggested. That's what the rest of them suggested. And he followed it.
Read Endgame. Second point you mentioned is we learned the lesson in Vietnam. Wasn't the lesson learned in Vietnam, Congressman, a war that I oppose, that if you get in a war, once you get in it, you got to do what's necessary to win, just like John McCain is saying today?
Certainly, if we decide to declare war on Yugoslavia, on Milosevic, then sure, we have to do whatever it takes to win, and I understand that. But right now, we're still in the beginning phases. Do we go in with ground troops? Do we escalate? And once that choice is made, once the troops are on the ground, sure, you do everything you can to cut off the head of your opponent.
Congressman Kucinich, you in an op-ed in the New York Times, I guess about a week ago, said that you were critical of this entire operation because of the so-called collateral or civilian damage.
Right.
I want to show you a clip of State Department spokesman James Rubin addressing that issue. Let's look at this.
We do believe that after NATO bombings of certain sites, the Serbs very cravenly go in and destroy civilian buildings around those targets to try to create a misimpression that NATO bombings have destroyed civilian targets.
Now, we know that Nazi forces did this in World War II. We know that Saddam Hussein did it in 1991 in the Gulf War. And we know Milosevic. Isn't it possible that defenders of the Serbs, or at least opponents of the NATO action like you, could be being used as dupes by Milosevic, who's staging some of this so-called civilian damage?
Well, let me tell you why it's likely I'm not a Milosevic dupe. I'm Croatian, and I was in Croatia over the holidays visiting with family and hoping to visit the place where my grandfather was born, a little town called Batnoga, which was leveled in the war with Serbia. So it isn't like I have some special affection for Mr. Milosevic. I have a special affection for peace, though. And that affection causes me, even in this grim moment, to suggest that we haven't really looked at peace strategically, because peace has a strategy, and that's why I keep suggesting, keep thinking peace, not war. Keep thinking getting the Russians involved in trying to reach a peaceful settlement. Get religious leaders involved. I've said this, and I'm going to keep saying it. Someone needs to keep putting out there, war is not inevitable, peace can be inevitable, but we have to keep talking about it as an option.
Well, that's very admirable, but I want to show you this Newsweek poll that was released yesterday. It shows that only 15% of the American people think that airstrikes will be sufficient to drive Milosevic out of Kosovo, and 71% say that ground troops will be necessary. I mean, aren't you really out of step with the mainstream of America and the mainstream of your colleagues?
I know exactly how the American people feel about this. My heart goes out to the Albanian refugees and the Albanians who are still suffering there, and just as all Americans do. And I feel very strongly about the Albanians' plight. but we have to also, you know, we can't run international policy while our feelings are important in driving policy. And I use the same thing. We can't let our policy be driven by our feelings alone. We have to think. We have to think clearly about what we're doing and ask, are these options, the military options we're using, the right thing? Have we accomplished something with our bombing? Will a ground invasion, in fact, produce the desired results? And there's questions that we have to
Joe, I ran into conservative activist Grover Norquist here at CNN yesterday. Said something about Kosovo. He sniffed Bill Clinton's war. Is that what it is? Is that how you see it?
You know whose war it is? It is the war of all Americans, and it's especially the war of the men and women of the armed services. A heck of a lot who come from my district, who I live with, who my children go to school with their children. No, this is not Bill Clinton's war. This is everybody's war. And let me say, and I want to follow up really quickly on this. If we have a foreign policy based on emotion, then we'll have happened right here what happened in Somalia.
All right, well, I want to pick up on that point because it's the second time you raised it tonight, the questions about Bill Clinton's foreign policy. The Weekly Standard, probably the most conservative journal around, had editorial this week, which is, we're going to see here, which just says simply, win it. Right. The very last two sentences, Joe, I want to read to you. Quote, there will be a time later on, for postmortems on the Clinton administration's conduct of this war and for a broader debate on the principles and practice of American foreign policy. The task now is to win the war. Isn't it time to put that criticism aside, Joe, and say, now that we're in there, what are we going to do to make sure that we help these people and get rid of Milosevic?
As is the case with the Clinton administration on foreign policy, it's never clearly defined what we're doing or where we are. Are we at war? If we're at war, then let the president bring it to the United States Congress and let the Congress decide whether they're going to declare war in a 600-year-old ethnic and religious civil war. And if so, fine. And like I said before, if you declare war, if we decide to step over the line and introduce ground troops and go all out, then you do whatever it takes.
Right. Yes or no question from both of you. The president's asking for more money for this operation, maybe $3 to $8 billion. Will you vote for the fund?
If the troops are over there, yes.
Will you?
For humanitarian purposes.
All right. That's the end of the show because we're out of time. Gentlemen, thank you. Congressman Scarborough, good to have you back.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you again. Ralph Reed and I will wrap it up with our closing comments.
Mortgage interest rates have been slashed to some of their lowest levels ever. The time to refinance is right now. Just call Zytec Funding at 1-800-71-FIXED. Today's low 30-year fixed rate is just 6.75%. APR 7.005%. There are no points, no deposits, and rates will never go down to zero. So what are you waiting for?
It's smart financing from Zytec Funding.
Refinance now to a low 30-year fixed rate of just 6.75% with 0 points. Call 1-800-71-FIXED.
Look, you want the latest investment fads, read the other guys. You want to make money, read Forbes.
Call now and save 71% on Forbes.
I own my own business, and I turn to Forbes for inspiration. I find every issue of Forbes is filled with good ideas about successful new companies, new technologies, and creative new ways of making money.
Forbes brings you in-depth reports on companies that are about to make big news and big profits for their investors. Plus advice and information you can use to get ahead and stay ahead in business.
I read Forbes as a businessman and as an investor. Forbes helps me achieve what I want most, my financial independence.
There's never been a better time to subscribe to Forbes. Call now and we'll send you a risk-free issue. If you like it, we'll send you 13 more issues for just $19.97. You'll also get the Forbes Investment Guide free with your subscription. It's filled with intelligent, often surprising investment advice.
You want to make money? Read Forbes.
Call 1-800-306-5300 for a free issue of Forbes and the Investment Guide. Call now.
Now, CNN.com/health with WebMD offers the most comprehensive healthcare information online. From breaking news and cutting-edge treatments to alternative remedies, find the answers to your questions on CNN.com in association with WebMD.
3 full hours of music that will lift you up and soothe your spirit on 3 CDs or cassettes. Discover the soothing world of quiet moods. Here's how to order.
To order Quiet Moods, call 1-800-306-5300 or send $24.99 for 3 cassettes or 3 CDs, plus $4.95 shipping and handling to the address on your screen. Now there's more news in the morning with Carol Lynn and Leon Harris on Early Edition, weekdays 7 Eastern on CNN.
At Bank of the West, we've been here in the West for 125 years, but there are still some people who don't bank with us. So we've decided to hold a special promotion. If you don't have a Bank of the West checking account and you open one before May 1st, we'll give you free checking for the next 125 years. It's a little strange, you have to admit. It's a heck of a good deal. So come into Bank of the West and get free checking till the year 2124. After that, you're on your own.
Don't miss the hit comedy Red, White, and Tuna, starring the original cast of 2.
Howdy. Howdy.
Now, I just want to say a few words.
Let's talk about ducks.
Art, come on in.
Well, stay her.
At a tour de force of comic acting.
Well, I'll be.
He's coming March 30th through April 4th. For tickets, call 790-ARTS.
Porcupines are delicious, a rare delicacy, and the lions know it. But their razor-sharp quills can inflict serious damage. Step away from the chair. Step away from the chair.
Have the right to remain silent. Not your lucky day? It could be. Spirit method, poker, blackjack, bingo, slots, and the like.
Ralph, I'm going to log on to jobfile.com. I hear it's the place if you're looking to make a career move. Wow, look at all these classifications we can choose from. You know, while I'm here, we can look for a new job for you, too. Here's one with a delivery service. Oh, you've always been good at security work. Yep, this is for you. We can apply for it by email right here. I love it. Don't you, Ralph?
Oregon jobs are on the internet at jobfile.com.
Tonight with Fred and Vince, 11 Eastern on CNN.
Weeknights at 11. Your best choice for sports news is Sports Tonight. With Fred Hickman and Vince Cellini. It's a fun, fast-paced, and smarter approach to sports news. Together with the insiders at Sports Illustrated, Fred and Vince deliver all the day's sports news and highlights in just a half hour. Join Fred and Vince on Sports Tonight, weeknights at 11 on CNN.
Politics.
And instead of voting the...
Gerald, have you found me an anniversary present yet?
I think so. And are you going to be surprised?
Mommy, can I choose our dinner place tonight? Sure you can, honey.
Promise?
I promise.
Log on to portland.citysearch.com.
It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from in the Army National Guard. If you want to serve your country, if you can spend 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year of intense training to be ready when your community needs you, then call 1-800-GO-GUARD. Become part of a team that will help you achieve everything you can. Join the men and women of the Army National Guard. Call 1-800-GO-GUARD.